Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're plunging straight into a grim, incredibly dark fable. We're going on a philosophical deep dive into the mind of a man who is just utterly terrified of change. Think of it as a character profile of someone trapped in the suffocating perfection of his own self-made tomb. We're going to see exactly what happens when the paralyzing fear of the unknown completely overtakes the desire to actually live.
To really understand this guy, we have to look at this absolutely haunting quote from the text. Every vibrant story of his youth, carefully extracted, dried like a pressed flower, and framed under cold, impenetrable glass. Wow. You see, this isn't just about feeling nostalgic. We're looking at a protagonist's desperate attempt to take his fluid, messy, ongoing life and turn it into a fixed, dead object. Why? To totally escape the terrifying responsibility of having to make future choices. He essentially wants to lock reality in a cage.
Section 1. The Architect of Stasis.
Okay, to really grasp the gravity of what he's doing, we need to talk about the existentialist concept that existence precedes essence. This is the philosophical truth that humans are, well, condemned to be free. We are forced to construct our own meaning through continuous and, sometimes agonizing action. But our guy, by hoarding his past to create this tightly defined, rigid identity, he completely rejects that truth. He's seeking the comfort of being a flawless, unchanging God in his own small, interior world, rather than risk being a flawed human out in the real one.
Section 2. The Lead of Mortality.
This complete rejection of freedom ushers in a state of profound existential cowardice. The source material vividly calls this the lead of mortality. And to ensure nothing could ever surprise, challenge, or threaten him, he actually weaponizes his daily routine against the natural flow of time. I mean, look at this. From 8 a.m. all the way to 11 p.m., every single block of time is engineered for curated stasis. He's created this perfectly flat, horizontal line of identical days, entirely replacing the vibrant chaos of living with a sterile, suffocating safety.
Section 3. Envy of the Herd.
But here's the catch. Even in this highly curated isolation, he can't fully escape human nature. He remains completely shackled to the psychology of the herd. You can see the stark contrast here between his world and reality. On the left, his reality. Sterile frames, cold glass, and absolute unchanging security. On the right, the world just outside his window. Vibrant chaos, reckless joy, and the agonizing, messy pains of actual growth. It is a striking comparison between his self-imposed living death and the raw, unpolished reality of the streets below.
Dropping into the grim voice of the protagonist himself for a second, we actually hear him sneer at the chaos down there. He casts what the text calls his evil eye upon the street, and he labels the passion of the living as just a childish sickness. But you know, this is just a massive defense mechanism. He has to reduce their reckless joy to the same dull hum governing his own miserable existence, because if he doesn't, he'd have to admit that he's the one who's truly sick.
Section 4. Dust of Spiritual Entropy.
Trying to hoard the infinite within the finite? Well, that inevitably leads to a slow, agonizing decay. He calls his collection intellectual salvage, which is basically the futile hoarding of moments within frames. But this salvage acts as a dark monument to cosmic nihilism. It proves that in a vast, indifferent universe, objective meaning just cannot be possessed, bottled up, or preserved behind glass. The harder you grip a moment to escape the radical freedom of existence, the faster it literally turns to ash in your hands.
This chart brilliantly maps out that tragic decay. At the moment of extraction, those memories are vibrant stars. Then, during storage, they dim into fading light. And by the present day, because he refused to continuously forge meaning through action, those brilliant stars of his captured memories have plummeted in value, crumbling into lifeless, meaningless gray powder. The symbolism is just striking here. His quest for perfect security has yielded absolutely nothing but dust.
Section 5. The Mirror of Awakening.
Surrounded by the gray powder of his youth, the protagonist finally looks into his mirror and confronts the terrifying truth of his existence. He stares at his reflection, and this haunting question just hangs there. Who is the guardian of this stagnation? It forces a brutal, inescapable realization. There is no outside oppressor holding him down. His perfect, horizontal order is actually a self-made tomb, and he alone holds the key.
Staring into that glass, the horrifying weight of his choices completely crashes down on him. Imagine him speaking to that hollow reflection, finally breaking down. Am I not a shadow? Look at what I have done. I have become the very anchor keeping my spirit submerged in the mud. I was so terrified of falling, so terrified of the unknown, that I chose a living death over the abyss. I turned my own life into a graveyard just so I wouldn't have to face the terror of living. It's an agonizing realization, right? He is the sole architect of his own ruin.
Section 6. The Grave Dance of Becoming.
But understanding his failure isn't enough. To truly exist, to break the curse of that gray powder, he has to embrace a deeply Nietzschean concept, destroying the old static self in order to forge the new. These are the brutal mechanics of his liberation, laid out in 3 steps. Step 1, he must violently shatter the glass frames of his past illusions. He just has to let go. Step 2, he must perform a fierce, unapologetic grave dance upon the ruins of his perfect order, trampling the dead parts of his ego. And finally, step 3, he must completely surrender to actual terrifying freedom.
By completing this grave dance, he finally invites in the spirit of becoming. And what is that? It's the chaotic, terrifying process of continuously and painfully forging meaning in the dark unknown until the void finally reclaims you. It isn't safe, and it certainly isn't perfectly ordered. But as this spirit sweeps through his shattered room, it burns away the gray dust of his existential cowardice. It replaces the lead of mortality with the dangerous, vibrant fire of a life actually lived.
So, I want to end this explainer by turning that mirror away from our protagonist and pointing it directly at you. Look at your own routines. What parts of your perfectly ordered life are secretly a tomb awaiting a grave dance? What sterile frames might you need to violently shatter today in order to finally embrace the vibrant, terrifying chaos of living? It's a dark question for sure, but finding the answer just might save you from the gray powder. Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating fable with me today.